Since the dawn of civilization, humanity has looked to the sky not just for direction, but for meaning. We watched birds take flight and wondered if we might do the same. We mapped constellations, wove mythologies, and told stories about gods and giants walking among the stars. For millennia, the heavens inspired everything from poetry to philosophy, and yet they remained, quite literally, above us. But something changed. In the past century, our gaze turned into resolve. We didn't just wonder anymore. We built machines, engines, dreams with wings. And one day, those wings took us beyond the sky. We broke the atmosphere. We orbited the Earth. We left footprints on the moon. We sent machines to distant worlds, peering back into time itself. And now, we are poised to do something even more radical. We are inviting everyone, not just astronauts or scientists, but ordinary people, to experience the cosmos firsthand. This isn't the next chapter in technology. It's the next chapter in human identity. The first time a human left the Earth, it was a moment that rippled through the soul of our species. Yuri Gagarin's 1961 flight was not just a Soviet achievement. It was a message: we can leave this world. And ever since, humanity has been obsessed with that idea: leaving, returning, and eventually staying. For decades, space was reserved for a few. Access came only after years of training, discipline, and sacrifice. It was government-funded, highly classified, and shrouded in prestige. But then came the private space revolution. Visionaries like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, and Richard Branson didn't just want to build rockets. They wanted to democratize the stars, to make space not just a place of science and geopolitics, but of commerce, creativity, and curiosity. And slowly, they did. We began to see launches that weren't for satellites or astronauts, but for artists, engineers, and tourists. In 2001, Dennis Tito became the first civilian to pay for a trip to space, a wealthy man chasing a lifelong dream. People were skeptical. They called it a stunt, but history may call it something else: the beginning of a new era. Today, the easiest path to space is through suborbital flights, journeys that lift passengers just past the boundary of space, offering mere minutes in microgravity and a view that defies language. The Kármán line, 100 kilometers above Earth, marks the symbolic edge. It is here that space begins, and with it, a transformation of the self. When Blue Origin's New Shepard and Virgin Galactic's Spaceship Two carry passengers skyward, they are not simply launching bodies. They are launching perspectives. Imagine, the engines roar beneath you. The sky darkens from blue to black. Then, silence. The weight of your body disappears. You float, suspended between worlds. You drift to the window and see Earth, whole, round, vibrant, a living mosaic. No borders, no politics, just one fragile planet, hanging in darkness. Passengers often return changed. They speak of the overview effect, a sudden, irreversible sense of connection to all life. It's not philosophy. It's not a metaphor. It's a visceral truth felt in the bones. For many, these moments are spiritual. For some, they're healing. For all, they are unforgettable. What used to be a textbook lesson in astronomy becomes a soul-deep understanding of home. But the new pioneers are not content with just a taste of space. Some want to live in it, if only for a few days. Orbital space tourism is now a reality, made possible by companies like SpaceX and the endurance of those brave enough to be the first. In 2021, the Inspiration 4 mission shattered the barrier between professional astronaut and private citizen. For civilians spent 3 full days orbiting Earth at 575 kilometers above the surface, higher than the International Space Station. There were no pilots aboard, no government oversight, just 4 individuals, a billionaire, a cancer survivor, a geologist, and a data engineer, watching the world spin beneath them. And from the cupola, the specially designed glass dome on their capsule, they saw it all. Lightning storms from above, continents sliding under a velvet sky, the moon rising while the sun still glowed behind them. They weren't just on a ride. They were inhabiting space. Soon, space tourists won't just orbit. They'll check in. Private space stations are no longer theoretical. Companies like Axiom Space, VAST, and Blue Origin's Orbital Reef are developing modular, habitable environments for research and for recreation. Imagine a hotel suite floating above Earth, a lounge with curved windows where you sip coffee and watch storms swirl over the Pacific, a sleeping pod where you close your eyes as Australia drifts into night, a gym where your daily workout floats with you, suspended in gravity's absence. These are not dreams. These are engineering projects under construction. The goal is not just to host the ultra-wealthy. It's to establish permanent, sustainable presence where tourists, scientists, educators, and artists coexist in orbit, where space becomes not a destination, but a platform, a place to think differently, to collaborate beyond politics, to live in a shared space where the only border is Earth's atmosphere. And yet, Earth orbit is just the beginning. We are already making plans to return to the moon, this time to stay. NASA's Artemis program will land astronauts on the lunar surface. SpaceX's Starship will likely carry them. But not just astronauts. Private citizens, storytellers, musicians, filmmakers will join. The Dear Moon Project, spearheaded by Japanese billionaire Yusaku Maezawa, aims to take a crew of creatives around the moon, not to claim it, but to be inspired by it, to capture, in poetry or paint, what it means to see both Earth and Moon in one glance. And after the Moon, Mars, still distant, still dangerous, but no longer impossible. Colonizing Mars is not about escapism. It's about insurance, a backup for civilization should Earth one day falter. But more than that, it's about human spirit, the same spirit that built pyramids, crossed oceans, and invented flight. If we go to Mars, it won't be to escape Earth. It will be to honor it by carrying its legacy farther than ever before. But space tourism, like all revolutions, brings risk and responsibility. It is expensive, exclusive, carbon-intensive. For now, it is a playground for the wealthy, a club most cannot join. We must ask, who gets to see the Earth from above? Who gets to be transformed by that view? And will the spaceports of tomorrow serve humanity or a privileged few? Then there's the environment. Rockets release emissions into the upper atmosphere, layers we barely understand. They generate orbital debris, tiny fragments that could threaten future missions. If we pollute space as we have polluted Earth, we lose not just a destination, but a hope. So let us tread carefully. Let us build access with equity, not just economy. Let us explore with humility, not just hubris. Because this moment, our moment, is too precious to waste. Still, we must go, not because it is easy or profitable or even practical, but because exploration is in our bones. We go to space not to escape life, but to expand it, to stretch our minds, our senses, and our sense of what it means to be human. And when tourists return from the stars, when they speak not of hotels or capsules, but of Earth's shimmering fragility, they bring back more than memories. They bring perspective. They bring urgency. They bring hope. And in that, space tourism may offer something priceless, a renewed reason to protect our only home. The journey has begun, across deserts and oceans, across air and now space.